Hi there, and welcome to Joy Sightings, edition number 28. Today I read for you the fourth chapter of Tales of the Resistance, which is entitled The Challenger. Big Operator gave the lad with the scar an unlikely assignment: keeper of the chronicle of sightings of the king. The chief of the taxi resistance knew that those who look harder for what they seek often find more than they expect. "On street sightings," shouted Hero, "but I'm terrible at sightings. I could hardly find the king in disguise in Great Park. How am I going to find him here in Enchanted City?" Big Operator sat behind his desk in the glassed-in office of the city taxi company garage. "You can't stay here," he said. "Raids make your presence dangerous to us all. On the street you can be mobile, and the taxi brigade can keep you out of danger." "But what about my scar? All of the Enchanter's men have a description of me by now. You yourself said that there was a manhunt." Big Operator was not to be moved. "I need an operator with street savvy and ranger training. It's imperative that someone keep records of the king's activities. Hide your scar. Stay away from lights. The weather's turning cool. Wear a scarf. Of course, this is a dangerous assignment. If you're afraid..." Hero started to say that it wasn't fear, but at that moment the buzzer in the terminal sounded the yellow alert, indicating that a taxi was approaching in haste. A mechanic began to crank up the great garage door. At the same moment, a dispatcher at the control panel shouted, "Sighting!" The king had made himself known somewhere in the city. With amazement, Hero and Big Operator watched two frightened children climb confusedly out of the back of the cab. The door slammed. An echo reverberated. "Hey!" shouted the driver. "I left the king to bring these kids in, but the Enchanter's car's comin'. Better get back to action." The cabbie indicated the location of the sighting to a monitor. "Heraldry Post 101, Moyer Oxon." A pin was immediately stuck in the map of Enchanted City. "Wait a minute," cried Big Operator, turning to the lad. "What do you say, Hero? I need a chronicler right now out on the street. Do you want to see the king in action? The taxi can take you back." To see the king. At that moment, Hero forgot all his doubts. He clasped Big Operator's wrist in the ranger way, grabbed his bag, and hurried to hop into the front seat of the taxi. Amanda turned from the control panel, shoved back her headset and earphones, and called, "Where are you going?" Hero slammed the taxi door shut. The cabbie gunned the motor as the mechanic began to crank up the great door again. Hero leaned out of the window and grinned. "To the streets! I'm going to see the king." Amanda stood at her seat. She seemed to have grown taller. "Be careful," she started to say, and then stopped. She shouted, "To the king! To the kingdom!" The taxi was back out on the streets, squealing its brakes around corners and through narrow alleys. "King could be in big trouble. Sighted all over the city. Enchanter's not gonna like heralds vacating posts." Hero asked, "How long will this cab keep running if it's not connected to the power line?" The cabbie kept his eyes on his driving, but a smile cracked his stern face. "You mean, how long'll this cab run if it is connected to the power line?" It's an old driver joke. Power outs frequently disabled city transportation. "Kid, Big Operator's a genius. Storage cells keep taxis running with power lines or without. Yes, sir. Gonna live in delight." Hero leaned back into the taxi seat. What in the world was he doing out on these streets? How could he live? Could he sight the king? The last words the king had spoken to him at the great celebration had been in reply to his own question, "How will I find you in Enchanted City? Will you be in disguise?" Hero could remember the love in the young man's eyes. He saw again the richness of the royal garments, the gold glint in his hair. He heard the joyful camaraderie of the subjects of the king. The king had laughed and firmly clasped his hand. Hero could feel the warmth of that touch even now. He could hear the king saying, "That's right. You never were very good at sighting. But it won't be hard for you to find me. I will have a scar just like yours." The taxi slowed and dimmed its lights. Hero's stomach suddenly constricted. The long black limousine of the enchanter was parked by the curb. A group of people were gathered on the street within the glow of its headlights. Hero could hear herald horns blowing and the faint din, din, din of the death drums beating. Great darkness was all around. "Get out here," whispered the cabbie. "An all points bulletin is calling the vanguard to action. Stay in the shadows. King's in the middle." Reluctantly, Hero left the security of the little taxi and slung his carryall over his shoulder. He crept into the shadow of a wall where no night lights were shining. He could clearly see the group of people and the enchanter standing on the curb, his cloak of woven wizardry flashing light and flame in the dark. It was the first time Hero had seen the evil ruler since his mother's death, though he had dreamt about him often enough in restless sleep. The fire wizard stomped in rage on the pavement. "Who do you think you are? Insurrector? Rebel? Miscreant?" His voice rose in a crescendo of fury. Hero crept closer, despite the danger. He wanted to see the man in the middle who was hidden by the crowd. A calm voice answered, "I am the king. I am the true ruler of this city. The time for the restoration of my kingdom is at hand." "Ha!" screamed the enchanter. He stomped his feet and lifted his hands into the air. His fingers shot sparklers of fire. "Ha!" The wizard's eyes turned a malignant yellow. "To the burning place with you!" Enchanter's men, breakers, and burners parted the crowd with cruel cudgels and hot glowing pokers and closed in on the figure in the center. "I'll teach you to defy me and tell tales of another kingdom." At last Hero could see the man in the middle, but it couldn't be. It wasn't, was it? Compared to the enchanter with his flashing fire and robes moving like crimson flame, the man was ordinary, plain, unkinglike. Not at all like Hero's memories. He was dressed in common clothes. There was nothing glorious about him, nothing royal. The challenger locked glances with the enchanter. "This is not the time for burning. One day I will break all your enchantments. For now, know that I have returned from exile." "Ay, ay, ay, ay!" The enchanter started to scream. "Yai, yai, yai!" It seemed as though his fury would crack the foundation of the city. "Your kingdom," he spat with scorn, "your kingdom is nothing but a few trees and a handful of dying outcasts and starving orphans." The taxi honked twice. Honk, honk. Untrue. Hero moved close enough to see the faces of the combatants. Doubt and hope wrestled. The king could be in disguise, and no ordinary man could overcome the power of the enchanter. "My kingdom is here. It is anywhere I am and where my people obey my words." The taxi horn honked once. Honk! True. The enchanter let forth a blast of flame that struck like a wall. The challenger lowered his head, crouched, and stumbled backward. Though his clothes were singed, he himself seemed to be unburned. The enchanter jeered. "Taste what I can do to insurrectionists. How about another blast, and another, and another?" Flames shot forth again and again, battering the man against the stone wall beside which Hero hid. Herald horns blew, one after another, and heralds cried, "Treason! Insurrection!" Naysayers sang their song of doom, "Nay, nay, 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 nay." "This can't be the king," thought Hero. "A true king would never take such abuse. He must be a pretender." The crowd was slinking fearfully away into the shadows of the night. Someone had to do something. Hero started to unsheath his hatchet. Then he heard the man shout, "No, this is not the time or place." The challenger pushed himself away from the stones. He straightened his back, walked directly to the enchanter, and again looked him straight in the eye, a long and unfaltering look. "Your enchantment is coming to an end, evil one. Think on that and tremble." Deliberately he turned his back, limping from the effects of the fire battering, and walked away into the shadows of the street. As he passed by, Hero had a good look at the man's face. There was no scar. The man's face was smooth, unmarked. Proof it couldn't be the king. That's why there were no heroics, no war of flames, no vanquishing of the evil enchanter in a moment of battle glory. The man wasn't the king. The whole taxi resistance had been fooled, duped. They wanted the restoration so badly they were willing to believe any self-proclaimed deluder. Then Hero realized that the enchanter did nothing, that they were all enfolded in a powerful, unearthly silence. No more the rush of flame, no more the beating death drums, no more the song of the naysayers. The burners and breakers stood like stone. The whole city seemed to be listening in a hushed and terrible quiet. The challenge rang in Hero's mind. "I have returned from exile. My kingdom is here." Hero heard a car door open and close, a motor accelerate, and then the sound of an engine fading down the street. Suddenly he knew he was standing alone, in the presence of the enchanter, in the bone-cold night air. He quickly covered his cheek with his hand, pulled his collar up around his neck, and started to creep away. "Scar boy!" Too late. "Scar boy!" Hero stopped. He waited for a cudgel blow to the head, a burning poker in his back. He expected the death drums to paralyze his soul, the song of the naysayers to strike terror in his heart. But the strange silence continued, except for the old name spoken by the old enemy. Hero refused to turn around and look at the fire wizard. One look and he would be under the power of his evil eye. Did he have any power himself? Fool! How could one lad withstand the enchanter? The hatchet. Hero grasped the handle, but the man had said it wasn't time, and he had walked away from this confrontation. Amazing! The man had been blasted by flames, but not burned. He had said, "Your enchantment is coming to an end. Think on that. Tremble." If he was the king, he had chosen not to use his power. Was there danger to power used the wrong way at the wrong time? Hero released his grip on the hatchet handle. "Scar boy!" The ugly voice called again. Again Hero refused to turn around. Wait! The challenger had looked the enchanter in the eye twice. Who had ever looked the enchanter in the eye and not been seared? Nothing had happened, except this silence. Maybe it was as dangerous for an enchanter to look a king in the eye as it was for him, Hero, to gaze at the enchanter. Then he heard it. The sound rose unbidden from some distant place, the one-note hum of the rite of adoption, flute-like, faint, far away. It began, one lonely sound. "Scar, boy!" the enchanter shrieked, calling the old name frantically as though he sensed power diminishing. Little time, soon the silence would be broken. The one-note hum swelled, filling his heart, which was beating wildly beneath his breastbone, gladdening his ear. That was it. He might be scarred, but he was Scar-boy no longer. He didn't belong here, in this evil place, this city doomed by enchantment. His home was Great Park, the king's place. His people were the people of Great Park. Mercy and Caretaker were his true parents. Hero began to walk, without looking back, without yielding himself to the eyes of the wizard who called his name. He walked to the beat of the hymn in his own heart. He no longer belonged here. The power of evil over him was diminished. He hurried down the street into the shadows where the waiting taxi beeped one toot. Hero climbed into the front seat. "Nice work," said the cabbie. Hero relaxed against the seat and took a deep breath. Nice work? He almost laughed. He was a blunderer. He blundered into everything: danger, safety, friendship, conflict. The two watched as the enchanter's car backed down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. The place of confrontation was empty. Even the herald had deserted his post. Something more tremendous than a war of flames had just taken place. It took as much strength for a powerful man to choose not to use power as to use it, maybe more. "Let's go," Hero said to the cabbie. "Where to?" asked the driver, turning on the motor. "To find the king, of course." So Hero became the keeper of the chronicle of sightings of the king. He was often in dangerous places, often filled with doubt, but he found more reason to believe than to not believe, and he discovered for himself that in the kingdom, where the king rules, believing is seeing.